Today's guest is more than just a brother. He's someone I've watched lead with purpose, humility, and quiet strength. Kareem Hinckson grew up in New York City, the youngest of seven, raised by Guyanese parents, and grounded in faith, family, and hustle. He earned a football scholarship, taught in the South Bronx, launched a real estate business, and carved out a powerful career in finance, all while staying true to where he came from. He's a proud alpha, a deep thinker, a steady voice for those navigating spaces not built for us. Today, we talk about authenticity, ambition, and what it really means to lead. When your roots are deep and your vision's even deeper. Let's get into it. All right, Kareem, my brother from another mother. Welcome to the Playbook.
What's going on, brother? It's a long time, man. Thank you for having me. What's going on, brother?
Yeah, good, good, good. Just to give our listeners some context, me and Kareem have known each other since we were teenagers. We played high school football together, and we've been holding each other accountable along this journey in pursuit of our family legacy and professional growth. Kareem, one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you onto the show, because always the show's about the playbook. It's about people hearing real stories and hopefully walking away with either motivated or with some tips and tricks for how to even navigate their space. And I thought you would be perfect for the show because I've been there with you on your journey from possible NFL future to teaching
Yeah,
and high teaching, right? And
yeah,
then
yeah.
deciding to make a huge career
Taking
pivot,
it back.
all right? And
Mm-hmm.
going into finance and watching you deep dive into finance to the point where now you are a bona fide leader in your space. So take us back, man. Take us back to when the moment when you realize, okay, I now know what I want to do with my career.
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on, and I love this concept. I love this idea. So again, keep doing what you're doing. So that's a very good question. So you may or may not remember this, and I like how you talked about the arc of our friendship. I've known you since we were in Brooklyn, Texas. That's 14 years old. I don't want to date myself, but that's 30 plus years ago, right?
Yeah.
I'm old. You're not old, but when you ask that question, what made me, when I think about where I'm at today, I actually think about a conversation I had with you. So I don't know if you remember when I was teaching, right? You got me into working out again because, I
Hmm.
played football, so all you do was work out. And then I was just so happy because your body's super sore from all those years of playing football. I never
Hmm.
thought I had to lift again. So I remember I was working in the Bronx. You were working at an accounting firm, if I recall. And we used to work out at this gym at the Patagons or somewhere in Canarsie.
Yeah,
We were both
yeah,
living in
yeah,
Canarsie at the same
yeah,
time.
yeah.
And so I think, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we work out. And, you were in the finance world. I think you either had just graduated from Baruch, you were getting your MBA,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And I was like, this teaching thing, I was doing the entrepreneurial thing, and you had just finished up grad school. And I was like, why don't I go to grad school? Right. So I
Oh.
decided to pursue my MBA, believe it or not, at pace, but I was really doing it to be like, look, I got my real estate business. I remember
Hmm.
as a teacher, I would challenge my students as a social studies teacher. I would say, hey, you know, education is important, right? And if you think about the populace that I was dealing with, I was working in the South Bronx.
Hmm.
75 to 85% of my students were free and reduced lunch below the poverty line. They really
Hmm.
didn't see beyond their environment. So
Hmm.
one of my kids challenged me, like, don't you ever make mistakes. So here I am being somewhat of a
Oh,
hypocrite. I'm running a real
gotcha.
estate business that's, fraught with errors, right? Like I was running
Hmm.
a business back of an envelope, so to speak, right? And this is the
Hmm.
era where low interest rates. So even if you wanted to miss, you couldn't miss. But I think
Yeah.
you're smart enough to realize that those times are going to change, and being sharp and more precise in your decision making process and how you're building your business, it's not going to always be that easy. So I decided to go get my MBA at
Yeah.
Pace, do entrepreneurial studies. I had a professor who said, you're really good at this finance thing. And that's what I think about. What's important, you set your mind, when you go to college or whatever it is in life, I'm going to do this, but you need to be open-minded. So the best thing a college could do is force you to take core courses. So that's your accounting, that's your finance. I know you
Hmm.
want to do entrepreneurial studies, but you got to do these four things first because that's your baseline. So he said,
Hmm.
you can always do entrepreneurial studies, but let's get your master's in finance. And so I pursued that avenue. I did really well there. Thinking back at it, I probably should have taken the GMAT a little bit more seriously because really where you end up going to school, right? It's not to say that you can't get to the Goldmans or whatever of the
Yeah.
world, but it's
Yeah.
a lot easier when you got a tier
Let,
one.
Listen. I
Mhm.
don't want to interrupt you,
No.
but I went to school upstate. I went to UB, right?
Yep.
We
Yep.
both played college
Buffalo, right?
football. I
Hmm.
went to university at Buffalo. Beautiful campus, beautiful school. And in hindsight, I should have never went there. I can't
Yeah.
say in hindsight because it gave me so much. It gave me the scholarship. I can't
Absolutely.
say that. So I want to shout out UB. But what I realized is when I left UB with a degree in finance and I tried to come back to New York City,
Yeah.
and back then you found opportunities for employment in the newspaper. In the back
Yeah.
of the newspaper is where this
Yeah.
is before Craigslist. This is
Yep.
before Indeed. And I would look at jobs that said Ivy League need only apply.
There you
And
go.
I said, holy.
Yeah.
And that's funny. That's how I got forced into entrepreneurship because with my
Yeah.
degree, because my school wasn't a pipeline into the finance
There you
industries.
go. There you go.
Said, all right, so we're gonna have to figure this out. But
Yeah.
anyway, you just sparked that thought. But tier one G
No,
man, go
look,
ahead.
that bro, that's factual, right? And it still exists to the day today, right? Like they have all those other avenues, Indeed, LinkedIn, but there's still this like Ivy League stuff, and I'll tell you why, right? So I got the degree from Pace. No one was really knocking at the door, right? But I had an opportunity to work at a consulting firm.
I
And
remember
there's
this
a
one.
funny
Yep.
story about that. I had a great offer from the consulting firm. This is like late 2007. I wanted to finish my tenure as an educator because you start something, you finish it, right? Again, I'm very much about principles, right? I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to see my kids graduate,
Mm-hmm.
and literally when I was going to start, 2 weeks before I was going to start, the FedEx truck shows up to my house with a check for an undisclosed amount, but also a letter
Mm-hmm.
of being terminated. Right, I was
I
terminated.
remember
So
this.
this is
Yeah,
like this is like the movie Friday. It was literally a Friday. I got
I
fired on my
guess
day
I only
off,
did.
dude.
Yeah, I remember this.
You remember that, right? Like this is
Yeah.
deja vu, right? Like that hurt, right?
Mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm,
brother, you have two choices, right? You could lay down, and I think that's where the sports mentality and my culture, seeing my parents get up
mm-hmm,
every day, overcome adversity. I chose not to lay down, right? So,
mm-hmm,
like you, I opened up the newspaper, like you said, you picked it up every day, you increased the
mm-hmm,
subscription, right? And you're
mm-hmm.
like,
Yeah.
Ivy League only apply, Ivy League only apply. So you're naturally not applying to that. I remember they used to have these it was like these recruiters, but they weren't recruiters. Like you had to come in and do a typing test and an
Yeah.
acting test, and they'd place you, right?
Like
That
those
didn't
search
work out
firms.
because,
Yeah.
yeah, like those search firms, right? That didn't work out. But Goldman Sachs had it was genius. It was really genius, right? And
Mm-hmm,
that's why they're the venerable institution as successful as they are. They decided that we need to broaden our scope beyond just focusing on the same talent pool that everybody else is, right? So this is
mm-hmm,
like homogeneous versus heterogeneous thinking, right? And
mm-hmm,
so there was this thing where like submit your application. We are having like a happy hour in our New Jersey city offices, and they basically took folks' resumes, and I got invited, right? And so I'm in this room at 30 Hudson. There's like 600 applicants, right? And it was literally
mm-hmm.
like a speed dating interview type of
Oh
thing.
wow.
Yeah, it
I
was a
never heard
speed.
this from you. This is my first time
Yeah,
hearing
dude.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Speed dating interview. And it's funny when you talk about natural selection because there's a method to
Uh-huh.
the madness, right? So they had the cocktails, they had the food circulating. So
Mm.
85% of the crowds eliminated themselves because,
Yeah.
oh, that's my boy Rod there. I haven't seen him since
Yeah.
frat
Yeah.
days. I haven't seen him since
Yeah.
the yard. So they're drinking and kikiing and they're not focusing on what they're here for. And you only got 2 to 3 minutes to sit in front of two people to just make an impression. How do you make that? You ever heard the elevator pitch? How do you make an
Yeah.
elevator pitch in 2 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about faith, your principles, faith, family, right? I say football, right? But I don't play football anymore, but faith and family,
Uh-huh.
through faith, I did well enough for them to call me back. And then the rest was history, getting into Goldman. Um, but it was in an operational position, right? It was all that
Yeah.
ain't gold, great
Mm-hmm.
name, but it's very important to not get caught up with the name, right? You have to do this self inventory, and you got to give yourself grace. I was 20 something years old at the time.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't know anything about like skill set. I
Mm-hmm.
was just happy with the job, and it was
Yeah.
a nice raise from education, right? I'd been happy,
I
but
bet.
it really didn't align to my skill
Yeah.
sets, if that makes sense,
No,
right?
that makes. I was there when you were when after you spent some time there. You recognized that there was a ceiling staying
Yeah.
in operations. I remember you mentioned that. But go ahead.
Yeah, look, it's interesting, right? The way I look at finance, I look at it as a pyramid, right? Um, and if you think about a pyramid, it gets narrow to the top, right? And so it's easy for everyone to be at the base of the pyramid, especially,
Mm-hmm.
a person of color. Let's call it what it is. That's where you'll find most people of color in these great organizations in operations, right? In I call, non-front office positions, or I call in positions where you're not an equity holder, right? You're not a
Mm.
shareholder, right? You're not helping to generate
Mm.
revenue, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so I realized that, like, one, yeah, I'm intelligent enough to stay here, but I never grow. And we're going back to tie everything together. Where you go to college actually did matter, is because the people who I looked up to in the organization, the great thing is you could click on their name, right? You could see like which distribution they were a part of outside of their team. They were like, Duke alumni, the University of
Uh,
Michigan alumni, Columbia alumni, this
yeah,
alumni, Dartmouth. And I'm like, I don't belong to any of those places, right? So the likelihood of me getting there, right? I didn't go there, so that was problematic. I already have my MBA from a school that's not from
yeah.
there, right?
Uh-huh,
And so the
uh-huh.
only way for me to get those opportunities was try to network my way in. And that's a whole different story.
Wow. Wow. Let me ask you a question because right now you hit a sore spot for me.
Yeah.
Because I started my career in investment banking, in
Yep.
the private investment division. You needed $1 million at minimum to
Yep.
be in my department to invest with us.
Yep.
But it was an operations role, right? So I did more of the account reconciliations, right? I
Yep.
was tracking stock splits and making
Yep.
sure that the portfolio was up to speed. But I didn't have any mentorship. Like I was the first. My
Yeah.
parents, immigrants. Uh, and so I had no one to really help mentor me and even teach me little tips and tricks. I remember my first email on the job, my
Yeah.
director came and almost scolded me in front of everyone because she asked, "Who are you yelling at?" And I'm saying, like, I just sent you an email. My email was all caps.
Ah,
Right? I didn't know no
right.
better. Right?
Right.
So
Right.
it just in that space, 'cause I know you're the youngest of seven, and I know your
Yeah.
brother plays a huge part in your life in terms of this.
Yeah.
What like how are you mentored in terms of figuring out how to navigate this space and say the networking, right? Because you don't learn that on your own. Someone's
Yeah.
teaching you tips and tricks.
Now, look, so that's a good question, right? And I'm glad you raised that. Youngest of seven. I didn't have anyone to show me the ropes as far as moving in this space, right? Like, my
Mm-hmm.
sister went to college, but I'm the only person in my family that's working in like true corporate America,
Mm-hmm.
if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense,
Yeah.
right? And look, I made a lot of errors, man. I made a lot of errors even from trying to network my way into situations, right? Like, unprepared for the conversation that I see a brother that's working in the investment bank at Goldman Sachs, right? Hey, dude, do some research before you reach out to me. We only a half hour to have a conversation. Talk to me about yourself. What specifically, because time is a premium. And I know you find that as you're older, right? Your time is finite. Like, what is it that you want? But don't come across selfish like you just want to take, right? But have your story, know about me, know specifically what it is that you
Mm.
want to do and why do you think you can do it, or whatever, questions it is that you have. Make sure that they're already refined. Just don't come in like, you and I are not equals but homies, and I'm going to do
Yeah.
you a solid because of the color of your skin, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think
Yeah.
that was the issue that I had. And then also too, what I didn't realize is that, you know everyone has equity in an organization. Some people's level of capital or equity that they have in the organization that they can spend, it varies, right? And what you find with folks that look like us, they don't have that much equity to spend, right? So although they could spend it on you, they don't know you, right? So
Oh
I didn't realize
wow.
that I needed to, and I learned this, is like, you need to build that over time, right? Like, break bread, find out what it is that what are the interests that, and it's easier today, right? Like, is Kareem part of, some sort of philanthropic organization? What is he like? So you can
Gotcha.
show up in those specific spaces and develop the rapport. Like, what can I do for you to help support you? And then we get to
Mm.
know each other through that time. So when it's time for me to recommend Kareem for a position, not necessarily in my area, but another area, I could vouch for that man, because the worst thing I could do is, I've got this amount of capital. I give it to Kareem just on the strength because he's a cool dude, but he didn't go through the same fire and brimstone. I had to because he went to Duke, or he went to prep school or whatever. I can't. Are you willing
Yeah,
to put your reputation on the line? And the fact of the matter is that you just can't do that. So I didn't
Yo,
know that. I had no one to teach me that. So that's a
yeah,
little bit
yeah.
puzzling.
Yeah, it's the whole premise of co-signing for you, right?
Yeah,
And it's funny, and this is off topic. It's almost what you hear now in social media with how people are looking at Jay Z and how Jay Z moves sometimes, and you know, like Memphis Bleak is always talking about Jay Z did the right thing by distancing himself
yeah,
because I would have only compromised what he was trying to do for himself, right?
yep,
And
yep,
so I never even thought about it in that fashion. Like I got a
yeah,
limited amount of equity within this organization, and I had to be judicious with how I expense that equity because I'm expected to get a return. So by looking
exactly.
at you, believing in you, and investing in you, it actually benefits me rather
Yeah,
than, hey, your word no longer matters with us because
yeah,
of decisions. Yeah, that's absurd. Absurd.
yeah,
So I know one of the things about you personally is you're a hustler, man. When I
yeah,
say hustler, I'm talking about you grind. You mentioned Pace, but you went back and got another degree from Columbia.
yeah, yeah,
And I was like, this man is crazy. I couldn't
yeah,
do it. I was like, you know what I mean? But
yeah.
it paid dividends.
Right.
How much, like, from a from a characteristic perspective, if we were to have attributes, right? What attributes did you get from your upbringing, from playing football, from your education
Yeah,
that you say
yeah,
these specific soft skills, technical skills are necessary if you're getting into corporate America, corporate finance,
yeah.
and these positions of leadership.
Yeah, that's a good question, and thank you for that. I start off with the premise of this, right? You have, and I tell people this, you have the bell curve, normal
Hmm.
distribution, right?
Yeah.
Let's call it what it is. Most of us are going to fall within that 66.66%, right? And
Hmm.
you get the scatter plot, right? And some of us you want to be to the right. What gets you to the right is the little things along the margin, right? And so hard work, right? Because you're going to have the dudes who are the outliers, right? And are like, just this dude's just a genius, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to say
Yeah.
whatever, right? But you
Yeah.
got the geniuses, right? The Jay Z's, the geniuses, right? But most of us, what's going to differentiate you is your effort level, right? Is your ability to overcome adversity. You will fall. That's going to happen. You will fail, right? But it's what do you learn from that failure, right? Are you the person to point and say is everyone else's fault? It could very much well be someone else's fault. But you also need to look back, look yourself in the mirror, like what could you have done differently? Could you have worked harder? And where that really comes from, man, and it speaks to the my parents, right? Like, I have a mother who, like, I don't say I rarely saw her, right? But she worked two jobs, right? She processed checks at Manufacturers Hanover, which is now
Hmm.
J.P. Morgan Chase, which is interesting, right? Right,
Full circle, right?
full circle, right?
Uh,
She was a RN, or not an RN. She was a nurse on the weekend, going to people's homes and taking care of elderly people,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. A home, not a home attendant.
Home attendant, yeah, home
Yep.
attendant, right? So
My
she
mother
was
was that
doing
too.
that, right, to
Yep.
help put food on the table because she had certain standards. Like, we are never going to live, we may be poor, but we don't have to live poor,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
A father who, education he viewed as the key to out of any circumstance, right? So I remember as a kid, chalkboard, hey, these are your 2 to 12 times table, UBS, and when I leave the house, when I come back today, you better know your times table, right? Sent me to private school, and I'm doing that right now for my kid, and inflation. He was paying like $1,300 a year. That was a lot of money if you translate it to today.
Of course.
My dude was only probably making, he was climbing the pole at 9x. 9x is now Verizon, right? And I will
Hmm.
never forget this, Rod. It sits with me to this day. I remember in my private school, St. Mark's Day School, seeing my dad. I'm on my way to another class with my classmates because it's very parochial, and we're walking the hallway together. And I see my dad on his hands and knees, like, hanging phone wire in the school.
Wow.
And as a
Wow.
grown man, what I think about what he was doing is that maybe he didn't have the capital to pay for me, but he was bartering his services and skill sets to make sure his kid goes to school.
Good Lord.
You get what I'm saying? Right?
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
seeing like the family dynamic was with my sister Deborah, who brilliant, went to St. John's. She's 15 years my senior. She could have went anywhere. She chose to stay locally, right? Stay at St. John's, chose to give up corporate America and work for, the city of New York and DCAS and HPD, because she's like, look, it's important for me to stay by my family and bring my family along, because my mom didn't
Mm,
have a high school diploma, right?
mm,
So she
mm.
sat with me and did the homework,
Yeah.
right? So I looked at
Wow.
it like all these people could do it. They made the sacrifices, and let's not even get into like the history of our people, like Black people. Like, if our
Yeah.
ancestors could toil the field with a baby on their back, there is no reason for me to wake up an hour earlier than the next person, because like most people aren't going to wake up an hour earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
There isn't another reason to read another page, right? There isn't another reason to stay
Mm,
another hour later. Like, there's no excuse in my book for
mm-hmm.
effort. You effort.
Wow. Wow. You hit, I'm getting emotional now because I'm just like, dang, I'm questioning myself. Like, am I doing enough? But your story resonates because, we went to high school together. We were from
Yeah.
Flatbush. We're from this, and my mother was a homemade. So my parents'
Yep.
schedule was, and those who follow the Black Dad Unfiltered, the parent company for this show, I always
Yep.
talk about it. I never had both of them in the house at the same time,
Yeah.
right? Because they
Yeah.
had overlapping shifts.
Yeah.
I always had one of them,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
was sleeping from work, right? But I saw that as one of the blueprints for you cannot outwork me.
There you go.
You just can't. And
Mm.
and one of the things that, and I pride myself on being Caribbean and Haitian for this one reason, and I know you're Indo-Caribbean as a Guyanese man, is we do not make excuses.
Right.
Like,
Right.
there is no, there's no space for it.
No.
I never heard excuses until I got to UB. I was like, I just don't know what
Right.
this means,
Right.
right? It's either we do it or we don't, right? Either I want
Yeah.
to, right? So
Yeah.
staying in that context, right? Because now we're getting into a little bit deeper waters. You went to private school, then you went to one of the premier public high schools in the country. I want to know, how did this, actually, I'll give a quick story. Funny enough,
Yeah.
because I don't, I'm not sure if you remember, if you're even aware, I went to an English as a second language school from kindergarten
Ah,
to 13th grade, right?
I didn't know that.
Because yeah, because my parents were teenagers when they had me,
Yeah.
from Haiti.
Yep.
They didn't speak English, so in my house, my prominent language had to be Creole. English became my most dominant language because my parents were very adamant
Yeah.
about getting me out there.
Yeah.
Um, but I forgot where I was going with that. But I would know I was going. So all my friends were learning English. So
Yep.
grammar was always a weakness of mine. The syntax, all that jazz. You're one of the first few people that I knew, even in high school, was reading books. I was like, what
Oh,
the hell is this? This guy
right.
enjoys reading books.
All right. Right.
This doesn't make sense to me. like,
Right.
like, we come back from college. Hey, I read this book. So what? That's how.
Yeah.
But it also explains, it speaks to what your parents were instilling into in your family and why you are where you are
Yeah.
now. So I say all this to say, to bring it back to the question was,
Mhm.
as far as your education pre-college, right,
Yeah.
pre-Columbia,
Yeah.
what were some of the things along that journey that, when you reflect, you're saying this was a pivotal part of me becoming who I am today? If you've ever taken the time to do that.
Yeah, no, look, again, so, and I appreciate those things that you said, right? And I don't want people to, there's nothing linear about, where
Yeah.
I'm at today, right? And we started off before earlier with like the growth versus fixed mindset. My road was paved with a lot of failure, right? Like, so,
Mm.
yeah, I went to a parochial school, but I got accepted to, I don't know if you remember this school called Philippa Schuyler,
Yeah, I
right?
know Skylar. I
I
know
got,
Skylar.
Sky. Hey, Sky. Her Skyline ain't the same today, so I don't know, right? But there's been a lot of changes to just anyway. That's a whole different episode, right? Schools
Right?
not
Yeah.
being what they used to be, but
Mhm.
um, I got dismissed from Schuyler in my second year there. Oh
Wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, as I was not prepared for that, right?
Mm.
Like, beyond the world goes beyond academics, right? You could be book smart, right? But I wasn't necessarily smart because I was raised in this very rigid
Mhm.
Guyanese parent household. Do as you
Mhm.
said.
Mhm.
Don't look out the window, because that don't matter what's going on in the street right there. It's what's
Yeah.
focusing, what's happening in these four walls, right?
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
when I went to this school that just gave me this freedom, like, lunch for an hour and a half, and you can go out, just come back. I wasn't ready for that responsibility. And for those who are in our age group, how New York was back in those days. I was pre-football, so I was just this tall, big head, skinny kid. I was an easy target, right? Like it was like a
Mm.
hammer looking for a nail, right? So, right. So
Yeah.
I did not do well in that environment, and the grades it showed, right? And so I got into a middle school around the corner, Caditmas Junior High School in Flatbush, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I needed that break, right? Because it was like, all right, it's not Skylar, definitely not Skylar. I could quit
Mm-hmm.
a little bit, but I could also find myself, and I did. And then
Mm.
ended up in tech, and I was messing around in tech, right? Messing around in tech. Um, but I knew I wanted to play football. I knew I wanted to play football. And, we had the same coach, Coach Di Benedetto, you know, he realized that, this guy has some promise or whatever have you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget, he used to sign our report cards because remember, he had to see all our report cards for eligibility. And I think I had a 1.8 or 1.9. I was on the cusp. I can't remember what meant.
Yeah.
I was still eligible to play, but they
Yeah.
wrote on my report card, you won't play at the University of Michigan with grades like this. I don't know
Mm.
how the hell that guy knew I wanted to play the University of Michigan. My favorite football player was
Mm-hmm.
Tyrone Lee, who wore number 6, who interestingly enough, number 6, I'm a number 6 from my line brothers and Alpha Phi Alpha. So
Mm-hmm.
that's just interesting. And from that moment on, brother, I was like a switch went off, right? And I think from sophomore year on, first semester, I was running like about a 3.2 for the rest of my tenure at Brooklyn Tech. And still young, college, played around the same thing, football, 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 football. So I remember, you're talking about your story about going to Buffalo, doing something different.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't look at things that way because, there's a reason why we are on the road that we're on, right? You learn a lot from those decisions. It help makes you, we are where we're supposed to be,
Yeah.
right? We
Yeah.
are where we're supposed to be. That's who makes us who we are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we both know we both had the mental aptitude to not play a sport, and I could have went to Michigan or Duke or
Yeah.
whatever. I wouldn't have got the
Mm-hmm.
money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Money
Yeah.
drove those decisions at the end of the day, right? We were getting money to play a sport we love, so you go and do
Well,
it. But
let's be clear about that. There was no NIL. We're talking about scholarships right
yeah,
now.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I wish they had an NIL scholarship. You had a Pell Grant, they gave you some money
Yeah.
afterwards. You had a scholarship, exactly. And when you talk about that, you'd have the people. They don't do this anymore, thank God. Mastercard and Visa in front of the cafeteria trying to get you to sign up for credit cards. Our folks don't know about like, credit card. You got to pay that back, right? And you can
Mm-hmm.
really do some serious harm.
Yeah.
You don't know
Yeah.
about that, right? And that's a whole
Mm-hmm.
different episode. I didn't know about that. So when we talk about money in college, that was how I was supporting or subsidizing my quote unquote lifestyle. My point is that I didn't take things seriously until I became a grown up. By the time
Mm.
you know, buying real things, like, dude, you don't even understand influence that your network had, like guys like you, guys like Joe, guys like Sean Riley playing, reading Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right?
Yeah. I remember. Yep.
Buying assets, real assets, not a car, but a home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that becomes real, this is real now. Like you can't fail, right? And so, Rod, what really for me, when you talk about what really was the switch, it was school, it was failure, it was this whole notion of not leaving any, and this is where the nexus between football and life comes in. You ever hear coaches say, "Don't leave anything on the field"?
Yeah.
I left a lot, and we played ball together. I left a lot of things on the field,
Mm. Mm. We can
and
talk
that's
about that.
fine.
Yeah.
That's low cost, right? I could sit back and romanticize how good I was as an athlete or who I could have, would have
Mm-hmm.
been, right? I just refuse to look back any longer. And I made that decision X amount of years ago to leave
Yeah.
anything on the field, whether it's parenting, whether it's
Yeah.
professionally, whether it's my
Yeah.
interpersonal
Yeah.
relationships worth having. Don't leave anything on the field.
That's very important, right? Because as to continue what athletes say is, I left it all out there. I'm
Mhm.
comfortable with the outcome now, right?
Mhm.
What I'm not comfortable is when I see the outcome and realize that I could have done something different.
Right.
But if I've done
Right.
everything I can and this is the outcome,
To live with that.
I'm at peace with that.
Yep.
So let's talk about in the time we have left this
Yeah.
extension, right? Because I believe now your title is executive director.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and that comes with new responsibilities. Because we used to have conversations, sprinkle conversations about career trajectory here and there.
Yeah.
Like, how did it feel? And just from a feeling, because at this moment you have to reflect and say, "Wow, I did it." Right? How
Yeah.
does it feel to not have this title,
Yeah.
this visibility,
Yeah.
uh, the transition from operations to being at the bottom of the pyramid to now a little bit higher up this pyramid?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I'll tell you first of all, and it might sound a little bit cliche. It feels like I need to do more.
I knew you was going to say
Right.
that.
It feels like it. No, honestly, because let's call it what it is. Right. Like growth versus fixed mindset. Right. Like you can never rest in your laurels. Not in this industry. Not in any sport. This is like a sport. Right. Like this is. When
Mm,
I told someone the other day, I was like, this is like the NFL, right? If you think about your favorite NFL team, right? Let's pick a team. Who's the best quarterback? Let's say who's the best quarterback? Let's say Joe Burrow.
she, yeah, Joe Burrow, the
Let's
Bengals.
say Joe Burrow,
Yeah,
right?
all right, let's go
Opinion,
with Joe
right?
Burrow. Okay, yeah,
Every year, there's going to be 53 guys on an NFL roster, right? Joe Burrow and my man, the wide receiver, is always going to have a spot.
Chase, Jamal Chase.
Chase, right? The 51 other guys got to fight for their spot, and they're gonna bring the newest kid from the University of Michigan, Notre Dame, who's slightly faster. And you know what? Most importantly, right? It's gonna be much
Cheaper.
cheaper, so that income statement is gonna look a lot better, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Same way these companies look at, right? So,
Wow.
granted, I'm an executive director. I've been an executive director now going on 4 years now. I was at MSCI and now JP Morgan in a brand new role, right? For me, it's like, yo, you got to continue to grind, right? Like, I got to go for the MD spot, right? That's the
Yep.
highest level, right?
Yeah, yeah.
What do I need to do to get there? Right? You got to outperform. Like, you are going against your peers, right? And we're all fighting to put food on our table, right? And there's a lot of, I keep going back to things along the margin, right? Like maybe this ED pairs friends with the man, the person runs the group. He or she is at a competitive advantage than you are, right? Maybe they're bringing someone in from elsewhere or from school and, or VP that could become an ED that's at a lower price point that could edge you out, right? So you always gotta figure out how to, one, keep your spot. The saying, cliche again, skate to not where the puck is, but where the puck is going. What's happening in the business? What's the change, right? Is it,
Ah,
is it AI? Are folks now looking at alternatives? Markets are changing, right? What are the asset classes that folks are going to gear towards? So make sure that you have that knowledge base so that you're looked on as an SME. You're the one that's, an additive.
SME is subject matter expert, folks. Because Kareem was talking his his acronyms. I'm in this world, Silva, subject matter expert. So that you looked at. Okay, I hear you.
Right? So it's a multitude of things. You just can't. There is no Rod. There is no. Hey, I made this and that's it. The only time you're at that pace is when you hand in your retirement papers, right?
Wow. Wow. You know
There
what's
is no rest.
funny? It's
Mhm.
funny, because I interviewed Rick Lon Stevens. He's Guyanese as well. He's the former
Mhm.
Intercontinental Champion for WWE and the last ECW champion, right?
Okay.
And he was Intercontinental Champion for a short stint, and he thought it was the beginning
Hmm.
of, because for those who don't follow wrestling, Intercontinental is just the next step is either you go up to heavyweight and
Heavyweight.
become
Right.
the next Rock, or you almost disappear. And
Right.
and it just, to that point, it's this constant. You've never really made it. You've never really
Yeah.
arrived,
Yeah.
right, until you say I've stopped the grind,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And there's this always constant networking, investing into yourself, and really becoming an expert in your field is what I'm hearing, right? Seeing
Yeah.
where the tea leaves are going, knowing how to read it. So, with one parting question, if we can go back, matter of fact, I'm going back to me graduating college,
Yeah.
and I'm looking at you right now, and I'm saying, hey, I have this MBA, oh, not MBA, Bachelor's of Science, concentration in Business Administration. I want to get into business, finance, and
Yeah.
investments. What's one thing you can, well, let's say I'm a sophomore. What's one thing you can tell me to help me prepare myself over the next 2 years so that I'm in a place where I can at least give myself the opportunity to
Yeah,
tell my story.
man, that's a great question, right? And the first question, and I get that question a lot because one thing I do is I speak as much as I can with college students that reach out, right, through the network, right. I will talk
Mm-hmm.
to anyone, right. And so the first question I would ask myself is, okay, let's be honest, okay, where am I where am I attending school? That's never going to change, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
is there a pipeline? Like, where are these companies coming to my school, right? If not, am I, and you always have to be engaged with career services, right? Because the way how universities work, right, they want to tout that like our kids graduate and they end up
Yeah.
working at the best firms, right? All right, so
Mm-hmm.
show and prove, right? I'm paying you X amount of money to come here every year, career services.
Mm-hmm.
Be connected with them. And then ask the questions why or why not. Why isn't JP? Why isn't Goldman? A lot of that stuff is common sense. But the best thing that you can do is find these schools that are adjacent to you, that are in the same vicinity. They're having career days. Can you go? Right to those. I'll tell you
Oh.
a phenomenal story. I had a girl hired. This is when I had first was at JP Morgan and I left. In addition to my day job when I was in the CIB, I also helped out with recruiting. And I remember we went up to we're at Boston College, right? And there was a girl, a young woman that went to a university that wasn't really highly recruited. And in the midst of all these kids from BC, here's this young woman asking the most questions. And, we're mingling and she talked. I'm like, where do you go to school? She's like, oh, I go to X university. I'm like, why are you here? She's like, well, they're not coming to my university. So I figured I'm going to come to where you guys are at. And I was just
Mm.
so impressed by that, right? That is someone, nothing was given to them, right? They're willing to go out and bust their gut to get it, right? I'm dating myself with the whole DMX and Belly, right? Bust their gut to get it, right? That's impressive, right? Because that goes back to the whole narrative of like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's what differentiates people is, can you overcome adversity? Can you take constructive criticism? Can you pick yourself up? Are you going to
Mm.
work hard? So that's the advice I would say to that person is, one, take a look at where you're going to school, do an honest reflection. It's okay, the money's spent, you're getting an education, get connected with career services. If not, find out what skill sets it is that you're missing, especially today. Like, you could go to LinkedIn and see what they're looking for, like whether it's macros or coding, and you know how to do Bloomberg, and you
Mm-hmm.
the one question that anyone's always going to ask you, I swear it's a common question, especially if you want to go in the financial sector: give me your view on the markets. Have a view. It may right, may wrong, but people will like, what's your view?
Mm.
Right? Especially at the junior level, all folks are really looking for is like, is this someone, they don't expect you to know much, right? But what's your view? Are you interested? Do you have a demonstrated interest in it? Right? What's your narrative? What's your why? That's easy. It doesn't matter where you go, right? Find out
Mm-hmm.
where they are, get connected with career services, develop the skill sets. You go online, you see what the skill sets they are looking for in a job posting. And that's
Mm-hmm.
literally, and then lastly, I would say, bro, is I can't say it. Your network is your net worth.
I heard that often. Mm-hmm.
Your network is your net worth. It's the same thing. I mean, it's a joke, right? The game never changes. It's just the players, right? You remember when we were growing up, right? It
Yeah.
was like, it's the same game, right? It's who you know, not what you know,
Mm.
right? Don't just knock on people's door at the time of need, right? You got to continue to plant those seeds, water that garden, right? So that it's easy when you knock on my door. Like, no, I know John. I've known John for 5 years. John is a hardworking person,
Mm-hmm.
right? He's someone I know that will show up every day. He is someone that will, if he has to take feedback, he wants both the good, but he most importantly wants to hear the bad. And not because it's to break him or her down. It's because he could say, you know what, damn, man, we grew up, we had to go to the library to learn things. No, he's going to go to Khan Academy, or he's going to spend the $500 to invest in himself to learn those skills to become better and be an additive.
Mm.
So I think that's how I would answer that question, man. If I could go back, I know I would do that.
Listen, I have young kids, and well, I have kids that are one in college and the other one getting ready to go to college. So even as you're saying that, and I'm always navigating the space. I even walked through one or two more nuggets in terms of, hey, how are you going to position yourself? Kareem, I want to
Yeah.
respect your time. Thank
Yeah.
you for joining us. Um, again, we're going to have you back again. I'm going to have you as my financial commentator on the show. It's interesting because as I pull up my guests, like one of the future guests is Albert, because Albert's a judge now from
Yeah.
district attorney.
Wow.
So my network, right? I'm like, oh wow, I got
Your
plenty of
network.
people.
You got
Silver
financiers, you got
medalists, yeah,
judges, lawyers,
silver
right.
medalists in the Olympics, you name it.
Yeah.
So with that said, folks, I'm Coach Rod, and this was the Playbook, where real stories meet real strategy. If this episode gave you insight or fuel, hit the follow button and drop a comment. Share it, follow us, and help us build the next generation of leaders. Look out for new episodes on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube, because every dream needs a game plan. I'm Coach Rod. Thanks for tuning in to the Playbook. If you got value from this episode, like, comment, and subscribe. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. Catch you next time.